The Universal Credit Surplus Earnings rules may affect some Universal Credit claimants if they receive a large payment of earnings from work. These rules are quite complex, but basically mean that an award of Universal Credit can include earnings that have been carried forward from a previous assessment. This will only happen where a claimant's earnings are so high that their Universal Credit award was reduced to nil. This rule exists because of the way Universal Credit works. Universal Credit is a monthly benefit, meaning it is paid and assessed every month. These are called monthly assessment periods. The calculation looks at the claimant's maximum UC award and then reduces this by any assessable income received. So, where a claimant has a large payment of earnings, this could reduce their award to nil. This is when the surplus earnings rules could come into effect. It is the claimant's earnings actually received during the assessment period that the DWP will use to calculate their award, regardless of the period it covers. The surplus earnings rules exist to make the system fair to all claimants regardless of how or when their earnings are paid. These rules make sure that those claimants who receive large payments from work once or twice a year, such as a bonus or dividend, don't receive more Universal Credit than someone with the same annual income who gets paid the same amount of earnings every month. Let's take Paul. He gets paid the same amount of earnings every month and gets some Universal Credit to top this up. If his earnings were lower for 11 months of the year, and then he received the shortfall in one large payment, for that one assessment period he may receive no Universal Credit at all, but, if the surplus earnings rules didn't exist, would still receive Universal Credit in the other 11 assessment periods. If the surplus earnings rules didn't exist, then, over the year, he could receive more Universal Credit getting a lower wage most of the time with the occasional large payment than he would have done had he received the same amount of wages every month, even though his annual income is the same. The surplus earnings rules kick in when the claimant's earned income in a particular assessment period has hit a certain level, which is actually quite high. Surplus earnings arise when the claimant's earnings are £2,500 more than the level at which they would take the claimant off Universal Credit. There are two terms used: the nil UC threshold, which is the point at which the claimant's earnings are high enough to mean they don't qualify for any UC, and the relevant threshold. This is the nil UC threshold plus £2,500. Only when a claimant's UC has been reduced to nil and their earnings are higher than their relevant threshold will the surplus earnings rules take effect. The DWP will work out the surplus earning figure, the amount by which the claimant's earnings exceeded their relevant threshold, and these will be carried forward to the following assessment period and added to any other earnings received. If this award is also reduced to nil and there are some surplus earnings, these will be carried forward to the next and so on for a maximum of 5 assessment periods. The level at which a claimant will be deemed to have surplus earnings was set deliberately high so that the DWP could test how the rules affect claimants. This is due to be reviewed and is set to drop from £2,500 to just £300. If a claimant has been affected by the surplus earnings rules, they should contact a benefits advisor and check that the claimant's max UC figure is correct. Often mistakes are made. Check that the surplus earnings rules do apply in their case. Check that they have been worked out correctly, i.e. check what has been classed as earnings. Check that their claim is being reassessed every month. Although from May 2020 this should be happening automatically, it is still worth them checking that it is. Further information and other videos are available on this website.